Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith. And if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this episode with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, we have Dr. Teralyn and...
We're starting off strong.
I was making sure I hit record. I had a brain fart for a second because my back hurt. I got a jolt. I'm like, oh.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That damp staining. Okay.
I know. It's never again. Never again.
Hire that stuff out. You're 45 now. Come on.
God damn, I'm the oldest bitch in the room.
You are. It's fine. You had a birthday. I might have told him that. It's not a big deal. I didn't say how old you were, though.
Yeah, we might dive a little bit into that too.
Okay.
Because so initially when you and I started talking, we had this thing about Gen X. And so I think it'll be fun to touch on that a little bit.
Sure.
All right. Today we have Dr. Teralyn and Therapist Jenn.
Whoop.
Welcome to the podcast.
You never know what you're going to get with us.
I absolutely love the enthusiasm there. This is great.
I told you, Jen brings the color everywhere she goes.
Man, I can't help it. It's word vomit and noise vomit, all kinds of vomit.
Wonderful. Dr. Teralyn and I spoke earlier last year, and we were trying to set up a podcast opportunity to meet each other and to talk about some mental health things and some Gen X things, because Gen X, let's face it, is the forgotten generation. We don't talk enough about them. And since we're both Gen X, I think this is a great opportunity. But we also have Therapist Jenn with us. So Therapist Jenn, tell us a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Yeah. In terms of the age piece, so I'm 41. Okay. So you guys are bringing that into the play right away.
Millennial.
So I'm right at the end. I'm right at the cusp. And so it doesn't really make sense because I don't fit most of what that is at all. However, I am. Yes. Millennial. Hi.
It's me.
Thank
Hi.
you.
I'm the problem.
I'm the
It's me.
problem. I know everything. Okay. Oh, we're
Yes.
gonna bring Taylor into this already. Okay.
We're
Okay.
not doing it.
We're
Sarah,
not.
here, shh, quiet.
My
over there.
bad.
Okay.
I will edit that.
You get. I'm a therapist, as you said, right? I have a private practice at this point, and I help clients with all kinds of ailments, from anxiety, depression, to nutrition issues, to, hey, I want a holistic chick who can help me with things that are a little off the grid. Okay, that's what I do. I got a private practice. It hasn't always been that way, but that's who I am and what I do.
I love it.
Mhm.
Dr. Teralyn, same question. Who are you and who do you help?
I am Dr. Teralyn, and I help whoever comes my way, really. I think I'm having an identity crisis at this point, but yeah, I think I am. We might flesh that out today in this podcast. But
For sure.
so yeah, I've been a therapist for, oh my gosh, I think somewhere between 15 and 20 years at this point. So I am solidly at the tail end of my career. So about every 10 years, I change focus. And so about 10 years ago, I changed focus and focusing more on holistic ways to help people with mental health. Now, I do have a private practice, standard therapy, but like with Jen, because Jen and I are actually in the same private practice now, which is another story to talk about later. We really do focus a lot on nutrition for mental health and alternatives for mental health. The time has come. So yeah, that's me.
One of the things I admire about you the most is you've created your social media network, and it's just amazing. You have so many followers, but the way that you address all the different situations that you get presented with on social media, I think is absolutely phenomenal. One of the biggest questions people always hit us with is, what are your credentials? And it's okay. I've got a master's degree, so I've recognized that, yeah, some credentialing, somewhat, yeah, sure, it's important. But there's also this other aspect that you can actually read books.
Yes.
You can listen to podcasts, you can take notes, you can
Get
really
your own research off the internet.
you can really sit and think about this stuff for longer than 8 seconds and give yourself the opportunity to embody this information and understand it. And then this magical thing happens. You really start to comprehend it and you're like, holy smokes. So then you have this light bulb moment, and now you can deploy all this information that you've read, that you've taken in, that you understand, that you now comprehend, and you feel confident with it enough that you can relay it to other people and potentially help them as well. I just want people to recognize, like, you have that capability within you. You just don't necessarily believe that you have that ability to make that happen for yourself.
That's empowerment, isn't it? That's like
Oh, yeah.
an empowered patient at its core.
Right.
And I think when you are, my gosh, so 15 to 20 years in mental health, you see some things. You see
Yeah.
some things. You see some things that are not textbook related. You've seen some things. Jen and I have had the most extreme mental health training, I think, of any person. Our background is working with the most mentally ill inmates in our state. And I that was extreme. We've seen many
Yeah.
extreme things from self-injurious behaviors to personality disorders to the seriously mentally ill. And then you go into private practice, you're like, "Man, this is really easy."
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a totally different ball game.
And it's funny though, because when I first came into private practice, I had a lot of clients who would come in and be like, "I'm probably the worst, the most mentally ill person you've ever met." And I'm like,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, no, not really,
Yeah.
but we don't have that perspective when we live in our own bodies, right? We think it's the worst thing ever, but
We always hear this from people. I thought I was the only one. And it's
yeah,
like,
Yeah.
we want this
but you're not.
exclusivity, don't we? We want that for some reason.
What do you think the reason is for that, that we want that so badly?
Oh,
It's familiar. I think it's super familiar, so it feels good. When you can define yourself by something that you truly can understand, and it actually gives you this awkward, strange sense of purpose because that's who you are. You define yourself in that way. To not define yourself in that way is very uncomfortable. To go, "Oh, I can get things done. I'm not as ill as the label says I am. I don't fit into that box," right? That requires like leaning into a whole different space, one which our environment and society and the medical model and all these systems tell us, "Oh no, you that doesn't fit there. No, you are bipolar. Here's where you go. You're right here." So that is very that I think that's why.
Sorry about that. I do have a German Shepherd. I should have warned you.
Yeah, mine's been walking around too.
She
Mine keeps
will
going back and
make
forth.
several appearances.
Oh, that's fine.
It's okay.
We were just talking about because Jen has a dog and I have a dog, and both of our dogs appear in therapy all the time. As a matter of
They do.
fact, my dog appears in mostly all of my TikTok videos right back there, just
Yep.
laying there like a
Mhm.
lump. So
Yep.
we're totally fine with it. I
My
did want to,
clients get worried about that when the dog isn't
yes,
there,
they get
right? They
worried
get
about the
worried. They're like,
dog.
"Where's
It's
your
so
dog?" I'm like, "Oh, oh,
fascinating.
there he is.
Well,
There's Frank. He's
Yeah,
there."
there's Frankie.
people always say it's not the Blueprint podcast without Chloe making an entrance at some point.
No, it's interesting. I wanted to piggyback off of that idea of labels because when we start labeling ourselves, the question "Who are you?" right is a pretty deep question, and most people don't know unless they've been labeled by something, right? I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a Gen X, right?
Right.
And I also have major depressive disorder. I don't, but I'm just saying a lot of people like to have that classification as a way to define
Mhm.
who they are.
It's comfortable.
And it's comfortable and it makes sense in some ways, but it's also very damaging. If I only defined myself as a mom, then I'm not me, right? If I
Mhm.
only define myself within the confines of a mental health diagnostic label, then I keep myself back from a lot of things. So it's this weird balance, and we are in a society, you can see it all over TikTok right now.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a mental health disorder. It's where the cool kids are.
Are you
And it is.
even
Are you even alive if you don't have a mental health disorder?
that's really what it's come down to.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
And so I look at some of this stuff and I step back, and it's everybody wants to give Gen X a hard time because it's like, you guys are damaging and you're hurtful and you're all of these things. But it's no, it can be true, right? But at the same time, it's just we remember a time period where we didn't have computers and we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. We had Atari and we evolved into Nintendo and Commodore 64 and Apple 2GS. And we grew up with technology. But we also remember a time of laying in our beds, no air conditioning,
Oh, yeah.
window wide open, and you
Mhm.
wake up at 5:45, 6 in the morning to these birds, and you're just like, you're so angry at the birds, shut up. And but we lived in that way, and it was almost you're in your parasympathetic nervous system at that point because we like to use all these different terms for psychology and stuff. But
It's another problem, but
yeah, but you're in this relaxed state, and then today, obviously, that's very much not the experience that most people are having.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because 'cause I'm thinking about the labels, like Gen X labels, like,
No.
how did I label myself? I was a cheerleader, clearly, like, why
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
I be? Anyway, I was a cheerleader, and the only labels we have are, like, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Uh-huh.
Like, that was
Yeah.
pretty much it. We didn't have I don't we didn't really label ourselves anything besides maybe what we were doing, the activities we were involved in, and the grade we were in. And that's freeing because then you can be whoever you want to be. You don't have to be stuck in that label that somebody else gave you.
We didn't even have the terminology back then, and if we
No.
did, it certainly wasn't what was again, we didn't have social media, so we weren't exposed
Mhm.
to it, so we didn't have these words that we could then put on our self map and say, "This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I experience, and I am my experiences," and all of these things happen,
Words
so
to weaponize.
correct,
Yeah,
and
they
so
truly do. Mhm.
what do you guys think about just therapy speak in general and how it's utilized today?
I gotta
Yeah.
say, if you're listening to the podcast, I think I just rolled my eyeballs in the back of my head. I'm not sure if they're gonna come forward yet, so you might wanna watch the YouTube version of this, but anyway.
I'm waiting for my diagnostic Bible back there to start on fire, on
Right.
flames. Once we start
Combusting.
talking, it's gonna go kaboom because
Yeah.
we're gonna not. Yeah, it's gonna be a little real here about our opinion on these labels.
No, I love it. Let's do it. I actually can't see you guys because 'cause I'm looking straight into my camera.
Oh,
Oh,
well.
oh,
You didn't
really?
know
You're
my eyeballs were in the back of my head.
you're over here, so I don't know if you're making faces
Okay.
or not.
Oh,
Alright.
okay. So I could
I
do
just
something
told you you're
real
gonna have to watch
crazy.
the video later.
I
Alright.
will.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we when it comes to labels, this is something, and actually on TikTok, this one blew up for
Yeah.
you, Terry, when you did this post. It was unbelievable. And essentially the gist of it was the basis of these labels, right? So our field, this Bible that we use, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, this is how we label people. Oh, you got one of those, right? Yeah, that
Oh, look
lovely.
at that.
Look at
Look at that.
that. You've got one
I don't
here.
even have the
Okay.
updated version because I don't give a
I don't
shit,
either.
but
Get
anyway,
ready
go
for that to start. That's gonna start on
ahead.
fire for you, Jason. So get
It
ready.
what's funny is I thought I was gonna need it at some point, and I started thumbing through it, and I really gave it a lot of thought, and what you might not know is I was a police officer for 8 years, and I did crime scene, and so
Yeah.
a big part of my experience is related to all the different types of trauma that are experienced, not only for the officer from their perspective, but also from
Mhm.
people in the general population and the things that they experience, up to and including leaving the planet permanently. And so you try to make sense of all this stuff by gathering all this different information, and you see a therapist for a little bit, and you start to take this stuff on, and you read the notes that get left behind and all this other stuff, and you really come to this. I oversimplify it, and people are like, "That's so reductive." Sure, but I like taking things down to a more simplified level that I can understand because I might
Mhm.
not be as smart as other people, and so this helps me make sense of me and my
Yeah.
position and where I'm at. And I just thought a lot of this comes down to self-love. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. Or I've done something so egregious that I can't take back. Nobody's ever going to love me again. So then we get
Mhm.
to this place of peace out. I'm done. And you have to find a way to make sense of that. So for me, it came all the way down to self-love.
Mhm.
I do have to say a couple things about the DSM. There was a time early in my career that the DSM, you couldn't get your hands on it unless you were a professional. Like, it wasn't until Amazon really came out that everybody's ordering this thing. And I remember Jen, she Jen is so great. She had you can tell us, what did you do to your DSM?
Oh,
How did
it's
you make it a Bible? What did you do? Because I
oh,
think it's
you should
fascinating.
see it. I
Oh,
went
man.
through and I tabbed the shit out of it.
It it oh,
Every other page has a tab. Every category has a tab on the top. I slept with that thing next to my bed. I am not shitting you. All right, pledge the truth here because when I started in the field, okay, that was 15 years ago, but one, yes, it was hard to get your hand on that book. So the one
Mhm.
I have has been with me for a while since that 5 came out. It was not the first one I started with because you couldn't just order it.
Right.
But two, I was so obsessed with what that label needed to be for people because that's what I was taught. Like the whole basis of what I was doing as a therapist was you have to put a label on somebody because that label, similar to when you're in private practice and running insurance, that label means something. It allows people to receive services. It allows people
Yep.
to have insurance, right? Even in the prison system for us, when I would label somebody with that would be very helpful for treatment because now you can get into this AODA, this addiction program, because you have this diagnosis. Or yes, you can come into your schizophrenia group because you have a label that shows that you're struggling with auditory hallucinations and visible hallucinations, even though that could totally be a trauma response. Nope, guess what? You got schizophrenia, right? So these labels helped push people in the systems and still do today where they need to go to get services. And so that was in my a naive brain and how where I can sit as a human now and say I did disservices. And Terry and I talk about this in our first episode of our podcast. This is we are going to talk about the truth for us too, because we did. That's what we knew. And that's what was pushed on us. And I couldn't get people services without that either. And so
And we
in my
still
brain,
can't
you
in
still
private
can't, right?
practice. No, you
Right.
can't.
So in my brain, I put this book, these labels on a pedestal
Right.
because it was the necessary step to get those things to happen for people now, and even in the prison system. Right. So that's why it was so important. So that whole thing is, it looks like something I've carried around. It's like the coffee table book that's I've
Right.
spilled something on it 100 times. It's taped together. Pretty sure I ripped a page out and had to glue it back in at one point because I was pissed about something I read, but it looks horrible because I've lived
Well,
with it for
meanwhile,
too
mine is
long.
lit on fire, Jen.
And then she goes on social media on TikTok, and that's where we started this conversation. And she posts a whole thing about this and how these contributors to this book, 100% of them in certain diagnostic categories, got millions of dollars in kickbacks from big pharma.
Right.
And so she puts this out on TikTok, and light looks like she's gonna light it on fire, and got just that response was fantastic. Talk about a
Yeah.
community that understands what you were trying to convey.
Mhm.
It was unbelievable.
I do wanna say those pages would not burn.
You
So,
guys,
does that say something? I
I know it's
tried.
gotta
I really
gotta
tried to put it
gotta
on fire and
come.
it would not
I know.
burn. So
Which we're not encouraging anybody to start any type of fires or do
no.
anything like that. Use your discernment, do
No.
what's
Burn,
appropriate, and
yeah,
be
burn
safe.
books, burn
Yeah.
bras. Here you go, Terry. Here you go.
But now there's been the shift where the mental health community outside of clinicians and therapists have deified this manual
Mhm.
because I have this experience and there's
Mhm.
overlap in all of these different things. And so now this is the label that I'm going to give to myself. And I talk a lot about it in terms of like anxious and avoidant relationships and
Mhm.
the benefits of attachment theory. Some people are like, attachment theory doesn't exist. It actually doesn't matter if it exists or not. What matters is that you have the ability to understand who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and then how
Mhm.
you relate to other people and how they receive you.
Yes.
When you can get to that point, then that's meta awareness, right? We're thinking about thinking. We're zooming out from the current situation. We're this omniscient presence looking down at the experience that we're having and creating a story that is probably going to be more accurate than the label that we're actually giving to ourselves because like attachment theory, it's a spectrum, so there's going to be overlap. Not
Mhm.
everything is going to be true all of the time, or there's going to be some things that are true when you're around this person, other things that are true when you're around this other person. And that's where we get really confused when we start diving into this. So I just encourage people, they get mad at me, why don't you focus on all of the attachments? Because I want you to focus on you. What I really want you to do is focus on how you feel.
Mhm.
What's going on inside the body? What are you experiencing? Why are you chasing after this person that has made it very clear they don't want to be with you? Why do we do that? And why are we trying to prove ourselves to this other person? If you take your power back for a second, zoom out, observe what's happening, you'll realize, oh, there was this other experience that happened. And yeah, and you start to navigate it a little bit better. And sometimes that requires help, but other times it just requires you sitting with yourself in silence.
It's the now what version of things. Like, okay, so I can diagnose you with 16 different things. And by the way, if you go to 16 different therapists, you're going to walk out with 16 different diagnoses, like
Right.
Mhm.
because of that overlap we were talking about. But a diagnosis is for the person, not necessarily a now what? That's where it ends often. Oh, I got a diagnosis. And so now I can hinge on this label for the rest of my life. And I'm like, but I always go, but now what? What do you want to
Right.
do with that diagnosis? How do you want to change your life? What do you want to be within that
Mhm.
diagnosis? How do you want to change it? And this runs into another problem of so many of the diagnoses that we have are perpetual. Like you can't ever shake them. And so once mentally ill, quote unquote, always mentally ill, right? And once you've got, and Jen's got a great story about this, once you've got a diagnosis on your permanent record,
Right.
Mhm.
good luck getting
Good luck.
that off. And let's think about, especially for our kids, how that might impact their adult life. A lot of
Mhm.
times, very negatively.
Yep. Yeah, I did a post somewhere on one of my socials about the government, and once you're labeled with the diagnosis, it's going to stay there, and it does not matter if you were given that diagnosis when you were a child. You could have been 6, 7 years old and going through multiple traumas in your life, and you got labeled with ADHD, right? And that does not go away. And so here, Terry and I sit on our end because we have people that come to us and we'll do diagnostic testing on. And sometimes the function of why they want to do it is because they want to get into the government job, but they're told no because this diagnosis you had when you were 6, guess what? That's going to infringe on your ability to be in any branch of the military, and you're not passing that part. And so we have had this happen so many times, and I just recently did, and it just blew my mind. And
Same
it
thing happens
leads
with life insurance policies. Like,
it
if you've
correct.
got
Yep.
these diagnoses on your life
Yep.
insurance policy,
Yep.
you might not get that life insurance policy. That has
Correct.
happened multiple times
Mhm.
in private practice. So, I
Yeah.
don't think that people really understand what the risk is of a diagnosis.
Yep.
And I think that's part of also, you see my TikTok, I talk about informed consent. This is part of informed consent. What
Mhm.
does it mean for me? And you'd be surprised because many people who go to the doctor, they get a prescription antidepressant or something like that. They get the script and they'll come into session and be like, "So have you ever been diagnosed with anything?" "No, I don't think so." "Are you on any antidepressants?" "Yeah."
Yeah.
"For how long?" 20 years. I'm like, Then you've been
Mhm.
diagnosed with something
Yeah.
Right.
and you don't know it." "I have." "Yes, because you have to be in order to get
Mhm.
those things." So it's mind-boggling to me how much informed consent is lost and basically put on the consumer as the consumer's responsibility to just know or to find
Mhm.
out or to dig deeper. When you're in those spaces, you rely on your care provider to do all that for you.
Yep.
And I think sometimes they also think, oh, they're in here, they're depressed, they're whatever. And I have to treat them with kid gloves. I can't tell them the full truth about this medication because then they might not take it.
Mhm.
And I know they need to. So it becomes very manipulative as well, the omission of information. And that, again, that goes down to diagnostics. So if you're
Mhm.
listening to this and your kid is going to the doctor or you, but especially your child, ask, what are the
Mhm.
future implications of my child having these diagnoses? Because you might not like what you hear.
Yeah. And that's truth you need to hear because there is
Yeah.
a ripple effect.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, your 6-year-old is not going to be the same when they're 25. Hopefully. Hopefully.
No.
You ask anybody on the dating scene today in
Oh my
2024,
god, this is a whole different ball of wax.
and they
Oh,
would
no.
no. Uh, the other thing I like that you tackle on your TikTok is, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? The answer
All
is
of
always
that.
no.
Mhm.
Can you dive into a little bit of that with us on first line of defense when we might think that maybe some things are going on, and what should people do? Where should they go? And again, we're not giving advice here. This is just general information for you guys.
Listen, it's cumulative. The things you do in your life are cumulative, right? On a basic level, if you show up with either fatigue or extreme anxiety, are you drinking a lot of caffeine? Are you drinking alcohol before you go to
Yeah.
bed?
What's your relationship with alcohol? It's a big one.
Exactly. Like all
Mhm.
of these things, they matter.
Alcohol and food. I
Food.
always ask people, "What is your relationship with what goes in your mouth?"
Yeah.
Be
Leave me alone with the food, okay?
Oh,
Hey,
no.
this
Come
is coming
on.
from
Oh,
a
come
huge
on.
coffee addict. 2
Same.
years ago, I
Mhm.
was drinking a pot and a half of coffee by myself every day
Yeah, that's
and feeling so fatigued, it was
mhm,
ridiculous. So,
mhm.
now I try to limit it to about 2 to 3 cups a week is all I do with caffeinated beverages.
Nice.
So, yeah,
That's
I did a
she's
whole
surprised.
year I did a whole year without any caffeine, a whole year just to reset everything, and it was the best thing I ever
Mhm.
did.
Yeah, but
Because
you're
even
also sober, right?
Sure. I haven't had a dr
Okay.
I haven't had a drink in 8 years. I don't know if you wanna call that sober.
I get so I same here. It's been a little over a year,
Yeah,
and I don't think of it as, oh, I accomplished like this task or anything. It's just I made a decision and I did it, and I didn't like the relationship I had with alcohol, so I
right,
moved away from it. So
right.
Mhm.
I
there,
wasn't a huge drinker before I made that
no,
I don't feel like I need to explain myself, but I'm just gonna
uh,
shout out to my husband who is sober for 30 years. So, he has a sobriety journey. I just made a decision that I didn't like it anymore. It didn't
Right.
serve me well. So that was about 8 years ago. That wasn't as hard to me as caffeine was.
Oh, really?
Oh my
Yeah.
God, no.
Yeah.
Caffeine was ridiculous. But anyway, so it's this Jen and I, we talk about the 4 pillars of mental health: eat, sleep, move, meditate.
Yep.
Those are the 4 big pillars. What is your relationship like in each one of those pillars?
Mhm.
And the eat one includes drink, anything that
Mhm.
you put in your mouth. But people wanna skip over that because if your relationship in each one of those pillars is terrible, right? It's hard
Mhm.
to get out of that because that has been an overtime situation that you've built up. So it seems easier to get a pill, you
Yes.
Yeah.
know? It's easier to get a pill than to quit caffeine,
Mhm. Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got those pillars, and then to add on to that, then one of the first things I say to people too is you also need to get curious about medical pieces and bringing that
Yes.
into your life too, because that matters. Now, I'm not saying that you had a diagnosis medically that was given to you and you either jump all in and go, this causes everything, or take it away and go, this caused nothing. But that matters physiologically, those pieces matter. And so, at a basic starting point, too, I will ask people, tell me about that history. Let's get curious about it and what have you been through with that? Because those medical and mental health, we're an intertwined machine, right? It really plays off of each other, right? It goes hand in hand. And so I often tell people to get curious about that and make sure you pay attention to what that is as well in your history and currently for you. Because that's a piece people sometimes forget about. And then when they open up and start talking about it, there's all these medical ailments, many of which have a prescription on them to help manage versus bringing in the movement or the exercise piece that could change
Right.
some of that for some people. So those are basic starting spaces. When you're asking a little bit about that, that's
Yeah.
where I start.
You
I
know
just
what?
wanna add hold on, I wanna add one thing because when people are on so many medications, not just psych meds, but any other medication, there is nutrient depletion that occurs with that.
Mm,
And so that's again, informed consent.
right.
What nutrients will be depleted if I take this medication? What
Yes.
do I need to be supporting
Mhm.
if I take this medication? And nobody talks about that either, but it's well documented.
Yeah.
And if you believe that a single nutrient depletion won't change anything for you, how about you deplete your vitamin C for a second?
I have one for you. B12.
Yeah.
Ah.
I don't absorb B12, so I have to get shots. But I didn't find that out until 2 years ago when I got injured, and they were doing nerve tests and all this other stuff, and they're like, we should do a panel. And then we figured out I was severely B12 deficient. After a couple months of getting the shots, all of a sudden I'm just like, I feel different. I feel really good. Like I'm actually happy as
Mhm.
well. And I'm like, who is this person? Is this gonna last? And
Too good to be true.
it really was because now all of a
Yeah.
sudden I wake up, I'm happy, things are going well. I'm just like, this is a complete
Mhm.
shift from where I was. I was extremely unhappy
Mhm.
and I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it was just like it was not good. So to have
Mhm.
that dramatic shift in the way that I was thinking and feeling
Mhm.
was huge. And I'm not saying everybody's got a B12 deficiency.
No, but
Get your
vitamin
vitals
D
checked.
vitamin D is another huge one,
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially in the Midwest. No, actually, I shouldn't say that, especially everywhere. People in Florida are deficient in vitamin D, the old elderly people in Florida. That's because as you age, your body doesn't make the vitamin D as efficiently. So, aging people need to look at their vitamin D. Any person needs to look at vitamin D deficiency. But again, getting back to the vitamin C, that's an extreme example, but vitamin C and scurvy was a huge
Right.
deal. Like, that
Yes.
was a huge medical problem for people. And not to get all scientific, but if you look at the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell that makes the ATP, which is your energy, the Krebs cycle involved in all of that has to have a whole host of B vitamins, different B
Yep.
vitamins to make that whole thing happen. And so if you're taking a medication that depletes your B vitamins, I'm sorry, but you're effed. Like,
Mm.
your energy is gonna be sapped. That cycle on a cellular level is gonna mess you up, not to mention your neurotransmitters require a whole host of vitamins, your B vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C, a whole bunch of vitamins to make a neurotransmitter work, right? So, again, if you are taking medication that depletes nutrients,
Yep.
you're gonna be in trouble eventually.
Yes.
You will be in trouble.
Yep.
So, yeah. Anyway, that was my soapbox for the
Look
day.
at you, got all
I
scientific
got
there,
all
using
sciencey for it.
words,
I don't know, it's
big
Friday, I
words.
got my hair done today, like,
I love it.
yeah.
Ah.
I want to give people another relatable story to that. And again, I'm not saying get off blood pressure medication, but I got put on blood pressure medication and there was a series of things that were going on. And so concurrently, what's happening is I'm also B12 deficient.
Mhm.
And so there's the stuff that's going on in the background. Ultimately, I ended up getting off my blood pressure medication and have had zero issues. But the biggest thing was the doctors that were treating me, and no shade on them, but they don't look at the root cause of why is your blood pressure so high?
Right.
What's
Mhm.
causing that?
Story on that too.
Please share it. I would love to hear it.
Well, I
Oh, boy.
2 times, like, one of the first times I went to the doctor about my thyroid, and it was in normal range, right? So, it
Yeah.
was in normal range, whatever that is, and, I was complaining that I was fatigued, and within 30 minutes, I was prescribed an antidepressant, a stimulant, and a sleep aid, okay? It was my thyroid. It was my thyroid. Now, the whole blood pressure thing, this kinda reminded me of this. About a year and a half ago, I was, changing some of my thyroid medication, and for the first time in my life in 30 years, I was unknowingly pushed into hyperthyroid, which raises your blood pressure, which causes gastrointestinal distress, which causes anxiety, and I was experiencing all of that, but because I'd never experienced hyperthyroid, I was always hypo, I didn't know what was going on, so I had to go to a doctor for something else, and I'm in the chair, and they're doing the blood pressure, and it was sky high for the first time in my life. First time. Now, if my blood pressure would have been high or high-ish all along, I would have been like, "Okay." But for the first time, it was documented as high. And what did they want to do immediately?
Hmm.
"We need to prescribe you some blood pressure medications." And I said, no. I said, "Hold on. This is the first time this has ever happened. This is not typical for me." I went back to the doctor who was doing my thyroid stuff, and I'm like, "We gotta run some labs." And sure as shit, I was in hyperthyroid, which jacked my blood pressure sky high. They didn't ask, even though it was in my chart that I had thyroid issues. Like, that didn't even come up. It was a single event. They wanted to medicate the single event
Yes.
instead of looking at me like a whole human, what else could be going on,
Mhm.
or getting curious. This is the first time she's ever had high blood pressure. Why? And they kept going. It's probably part of it's probably white coat syndrome and all. And I'm like, yeah, no,
Every,
like
every time
I'm
they
pretty
always say,
like every time.
yeah,
So yeah, that's mine too. And I didn't go on them. And it took a few months for my thyroid to get back, but then so now I know anytime my blood pressure goes up, it's a thyroid issue. Yeah. But you gotta look at people like whole humans, and that
yeah,
includes any physical problems they might have, they might know about, or getting curious about maybe you should go back to the doctor and check out to make sure you don't have something else going on at the same time here as mental health.
Mhm.
I like to believe for most people, mental health doesn't live in isolation. It's not one
right.
thing, it's
Mhm.
many things, and physical health can be a huge part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I feel like they should have a target profile for individuals where they literally have a full scope picture of kind of what's happening in your life. What are the stressors? What are you experiencing? What do you go through? What do you eat in a day? How
Mhm.
many hours are you
Mhm.
sleeping? And again, it gets treated as a single issue because you walk in and you're like, yeah, this is what's going on. And they're like, yeah, okay. And so then they treat the symptom, and we don't really go much deeper than that. And
Yep.
as somebody who's not a medical professional, I don't like the way that feels because it's like, no, I actually want to take care of this thing and eliminate it if at all possible. Like, how do we get there?
Mhm. It's funny because I think when I'm in the doctor's office and I refuse certain things, I always
I
think
hate
about.
it.
Oh, they do. When I refused the 3 psych meds, she actually said, "Then why are you here?" And I was like, "'Cause I wanted help with my thyroid? Like, I thought maybe you
Right.
could offer me something else?" And I cried in the parking lot afterwards, just so everybody knows. But anyway, so
Oh,
I know, but yeah, I was still empowered enough to say no and walk away, whereas
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people have that self-empowerment,
right.
to walk away or to say, "Hold on, slow this down for a minute. Let me think this through." I don't think that a lot of people have that. And so I think that's how we got here in the first place, especially when it comes to psychiatric medications. They just dole them out half the time,
Mhm. Yeah.
for anything, for a situational event, right?
That's my story of my psychiatric meds, right? One little bitty situational event and 20 years later still trying to finally get off of it because some asshole in high school dumped me. Like, what?
Wait,
Like,
what?
Yeah.
let's go
Let's
back
medicate
here.
Jen because she got her ass
I
dumped.
Jen, let's hear the
you
story because
gotta
this is gonna be so relatable to my
Oh,
audience.
man.
There
Is
you
it?
go.
Okay, alright.
You brought it up, so
I did, I know. I think it was, senior year of high school or freshman year of college. We actually talked about this the other day, Terry and I were, and I'm like, "I can't remember the year because my past memory is really shitty." Side effect of Lexapro, informed
Yeah,
consent would have told me that, didn't know that, lost a lot of memories along the way.
me too.
But I went in and yeah, I was having a situational trigger happening and I had broken up with my boyfriend and I was not well. I was very depressed, I was very tearful, lethargic, like constantly just feeling down, appetite was shifting. And so it was, okay, Jen, here's an option, right, for you to take Lexapro. And I think I was probably about 19, 18 or 19 when that started. Okay. And so I said, yeah, sure. I didn't know any better. I remember my mom at the time too was like, you know what, Jen, just this would be helpful. You need to get through this. I was just starting college too, right? Now this is coming together. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to get through school. So all the things. Fast forward here now, 21 years later. Okay. And here I am sitting thinking back. And each year I go back in and the line of questioning is always, you seem like you're doing really great. And I usually say, yeah, I feel awesome. And yet never was it, maybe you don't need this anymore. Let's talk about the start. Has your circumstances changed in the last year?
Yes, I
Are
did
there
not
any
marry that guy. I didn't marry that guy.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
did not I
married
did oh
somebody
my god. Has nothing else in the trajectory of the last year, like, infiltrated your life to go, "Guess what? You're better." No, nope, it's only the med. It's only the med.
else.
And so with that then also came a lot of side effects, right? And in things that happened to me over time, precious memories were lost. I can think back to having my kids and things are very foggy. Memories that I was there for and really in are not clear. And so that was a big one for me, lack of libido. I would go in and say, I have no sex drive. This is gone. This is impacting my marriage. And there isn't a med yet for females like there is for the men, but let me get you a sex therapist. I can refer you to one of those. So here's this added on all my, like, I'm the problem. Hi, it's me.
yes, you
And
get inundated with all this self-doubt.
correct. It,
Yes.
it did. And I lost myself over time.
Yeah.
And that became part of who I was. I was told you cannot live without this. You won't be able to go without this. Look how great it is because look how good you're doing. And so all of the losing of the memories and the libido and some of the other pieces that happened too. I got to go back to something you said, Terry. When you talk about nutrient deficiency, one of the biggest nutrients that is depleted on that medication is sodium. Okay. And what happens when your body starts to be depleted from sodium? I remember sitting there having these like heart flutters and feeling just super lethargic at times and going, oh my God, I must be having a panic attack. And just feeling all this when how do I really know that there wasn't a huge sodium deficiency in certain spaces, right? Because that's what that med depletes. That is the number one nutrient. That would have been part of a great informed consent conversation. Fast forward now, then I get to here as an adult, I'm 20 years later, trying to get off of this. And the
Mm.
hyperbolic taper that will take me a couple years, probably from start to finish, and the inability to even slowly taper down in some aspects because the withdrawal effects are so bad. I can't function. And so it's okay, we're going to go back on it. And it's all low and slow. And of course, I've got this great plan, but no one ever said, Jen, when you want to get off of this med someday, get ready because it's gonna freaking suck. Your life is going to pause and stop unless you have all these resources dialed in. So no wonder I would have been a forever consumer. All right, have I had I not gotten inquisitive about this and tried other interventions, I would have been a forever consumer because I don't want to feel those withdrawal effects. And so it's all of this wrapped into this heavy story of shit. You got dumped by your boyfriend,
Wow.
and you go back to the beginning, and I'm like, that was it. That was the beginning, and it just was constantly fed to me, not volitionally by any means, but that the doctors practiced and that you're doing great. That means you need to stay on this. It's clearly helping you. And so here we
Well,
go.
I want to add in because part of Jen and my story is this idea that we also perpetuated some of that language in
Yeah.
practice. It's very humbling to come out and be like, we have not been perfect. And we subscribed to a lot of the rhetoric that we were taught
Yeah.
by the professionals that we admired. right? Like
Right.
your supervisors and other people that are doing the same thing. And we've said all of these things to other people. If you're doing well, why would you want to get off? Or would you rather have sex or be happy?
Happy.
Is
Mhm.
that even a question, people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Or
would you rather gain 80 pounds and not feel depressed? Like, these things don't even make sense to me. Or the idea of if for somebody who doesn't wanna take it or cannot stand the side effects, because that happens too. It's like a diabetic taking insulin. To
Mhm.
me, those words now are so vile, like, they're
Yeah.
so disgusting because they're so manipulative, and they don't, again, take in somebody's personal experience. If you've gained for some people any weight, but some of them 80, 100 pounds on this stuff, and I'm trying to convince you that's suddenly okay. It's suddenly
Mhm.
okay that you've got this metabolic weight because your mental health is in check. How ridiculous to think that somebody who is
Sounds
100 pounds overweight has their mental health in check
Yep.
because they're having all these metabolic problems too. Like, that is the
Mhm.
most like, I think about the shit that I said, and I'm like,
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
What? If somebody just needed to put a sock in my mouth at that point. But it's just all the
It's true
things.
though. We
Yeah,
did. We perpetuated as well,
well,
right?
you
You
have a
know?
belief in the system, right?
Mhm.
That you signed up and educated yourself to be a part of,
The sure thing.
by the way, we were also
part of
scared
what they're
shitless
doling out.
not get sued because that was one of the
Oh,
things in
yeah.
the prison that it was
Right.
like,
Mhm.
you gotta follow these rules all the time or you're gonna get sued. That was
Yeah.
one of the things,
Yeah,
Which
so
and
I
we
commend you for doing that, by the way. That's not an easy job by any stretch.
yeah, yeah,
there's
it was
many
we were
sides,
sold
like
a dream. We were sold a dream, and you just said it, Jason, right? We really were. We were sold a dream of that the government gave us,
Well,
and
it's all
you're
marketing, right?
it really was. We get
Yeah.
these fantastic benefits, and we have retirement that is there, and as therapists to get paid while
to get your
doing
hours.
your licensure hours, holy shit, that's the holy grail, right? Instead of
Yes.
spending 9 years working 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a weekend at a shelter somewhere trying to get your 3,000 hours for your licensure, right? Like, we were sold that, and so that was beautiful. It was a 40-hour week. We had all
Mhm.
these benefits. I remember my father-in-law saying to me, "You are set for life, Jen." And
Oh, those
right?
boomers.
Right? Oh
Yeah,
my god,
right.
right? And then,
They're
oh,
so
Brett's
cute.
dead. May
Right,
I
yeah.
rest his soul, right? And I
Well, that's
think back
adorable, isn't it?
right,
Yeah.
and I think back now, and I sit in my story a year and a half ago when I finally stepped out after 15 years of not only being a therapist, but then also being a supervisor, and I oversaw the captains and the social workers and the psych staff, and I oversaw all of this. I was ready to be the deputy warden. That was my next step. I was being groomed for that. And what I was not told was, here comes back to this dream, was the things you're going to see, you'll never unsee. The
Yes.
vicarious trauma you're going to go through, you're never ever going to be able to shake that truly from your life. Jen, you're going to go somewhere, your doorbell's going to ring, and you're never going to let your children answer the door. You're going to have a code word for when you're out in public so that if you hear something, your kids go the other way, right? All these things that shape your life. You're never going to be able to sit in a restaurant and not be able to see the door, and you slowly your whole life morphs. Your bills are in someone else's name, this whole dream, and you become fearful and everything shifts and changes. And I know you understand that. I know that you have guests on your podcast I've heard that talk about this. And so for me, I lost myself. I lost my family. I was drinking too much. I wasn't taking care of myself. And it was just all came to that screeching halt. And something smacked me enough to go, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself because this model is not sustainable. Um, and that was the dream that was sold to me as though that it was.
I like
Yeah.
that you touched on the secondary trauma of
Mhm,
experiencing what your clients are going through, and that's something that I want to really drive home for other people, because again, we've gotten into the deification of this whole process with therapists and PhDs and researchers and all this other
Mhm.
stuff. You guys are human, and you take on everybody's pain and different experiences and challenges that people have gone through for a lifetime, and you sit for an hour and you take all of that on, and it has to go somewhere. And
Mhm.
so if you don't have a place to put that, then
Right.
there is going to be some maladaptive coping mechanisms that go along with that, and that's like
Absolutely.
the human part. We have to humanize the position and
Yep.
recognize that, man, that it's a really hard job to be able to do that. It takes a very
Mhm.
special person to be able to do that day in and day out. And amazing that you were able to sit back and, again, that zoom out and acknowledge
Yep.
that, you know what? This right now, it's not working, and I need to find something that is, that
Yeah,
will
it
work.
can't be.
Well,
And that's the weird part for her and I. Terry and I have a very similar story, which is just crazy because they jive together from the start to the very end of her coming home after getting all these meds, right? And looking at her
mhm,
husband and going, I can't do it. And
yeah.
same thing with me. It was the same exact story. I came home one day and I said, honey, I don't think I can do this anymore. And he goes, it's about freaking time you said
Yeah.
that. And I'm like,
We got the same response, different husbins, pretty
different
much.
we're not
God,
sister
yes,
wives. We're not sister wives. We're not into that stuff, and we do have
right?
2 separate husbands, just so you know. Just in case you're curious.
But it's true, and I think so a lot of stuff happened when I worked in the prison and some really not so good things, and Jen, you might have to help me out here. There when something happens to a staff member, they do like a critical incident
After
debriefing
after
thing.
action reviews.
Yes.
Yep.
So they did that after this thing happened on me. And I'll never forget because it was a psychology staff then that would go in and talk to the employees if they needed anything supportive, whatever. And the talking to that I got, because I was in the psychology staff, was you're already a psych associate, so you know what to do.
You know what to
You
do.
know what to do.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, okay, I guess. All right then, I suppose, and that was that. And I'm like, I did not know what to do. I did not. I did not. So I just marched on. So
Mhm.
I guess that is what I knew how to do. Just march on, just carry
Yep,
on.
that's
Gen X, right? Like,
exactly.
just go
I
forward,
wait,
right?
and that is what we do, right? Stuff
Yeah, it
it.
is.
Yeah,
Mhm,
store it and ignore it. Um,
Store
mhm.
it and
Yep,
ignore it. I like that.
yeah,
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 story of my
perfect.
life.
I use that a lot.
Yeah,
No, but
it's
I
good.
love that you touch on that because sometimes we're just too close to it. So we have all this knowledge, right, and this experience, and we got the PhD, and we got all this education. We've been doing it for decades at this point,
Mhm,
but sometimes you're just too close to it to be able to see what the next step is for you. You can do it for other people, and
mhm.
I get therapists that contact me through my social media that are attachment theory is their thing, and they're hitting me with, "Hey, I'm having these challenges in my relationship. What do you think?"
Yes.
And it's, you know what? I love that so much because it's like they trust you enough. They're letting their guard down enough to acknowledge that it's, you know what? I'm just like, I'm too close to this and it's really hard for me to get that next path. And they're actually really frustrated with themselves because they have that education and they can't deploy it in
Mhm.
their own life. And so they're looking
Right.
for that support, and that's often what we need is that extra support, right? To be seen,
Yep.
heard, loved, and understood and respected, to have that available to us. And that's what you needed in that moment from those other psychologists, right? That are
Yes.
trying to help you navigate this. And they failed that day, unfortunately.
Mhm.
'Cause I
Yeah.
feel like they maybe didn't know what to do either. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of assumptions going on, but again, Jen and I came out of there with a lot of trauma,
Did.
and
We
though
did.
it was such great experience on one hand, and it has really informed both of our practices today on kind of the approach of what not to do, and we're so free in what we can talk about now versus what we were allowed to talk about then. The biggest example that I share a lot is I had a inmate client who was very aggressive and everyone was scratching heads and they were throwing meds and whatever. And I did some research and found out that omega-3 fatty acids helped in this jail. So the jail was the closest thing to prison that I had in research. They helped people who couldn't get out of like segregation, they were aggressive, whatever. So they gave them omega-3 fatty acids and it helped. The incidence of aggression was reduced dramatically. So here's me, I bring this research article thinking, I'm gonna save the day, like saving the
Mhm.
day. Here's the
Right.
research, whatever. And
That costs money. It's not going to happen.
I was so excited. I was so excited to be like, you know what? Maybe this isn't a med thing. Maybe this is a nutrient depletion. This is in the early stages of me even thinking about this
Yeah. We
stuff.
just need to give them better food, guys.
Give them better food.
Yeah.
Guys used to order peanut butter to get protein all the
Mhm.
time. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I was met with, you're not a dietitian
Mm.
and basically sit down and be quiet. And I was like, all right,
Yep.
sounds good.
And
No
Sounds
that's
worries.
like
your
a
that's
social
your
media
yeah,
response.
it
Yeah,
does, right?
exactly. It really
That
does.
sounds like the comment section,
Exactly.
guys.
No, that
It
does sound like my comment section.
but that's it. Talk
It was
about
just
shutting
preparing me
shutting
for what
things
was to
down.
come.
Yeah.
Shutting things down. Shut people
Shutting it
down. Shut
down.
things down that don't fit
Right.
that narrative. Here's what we're doing. Here's your seat at the table, psychologist, alongside the psychiatrist and the unit manager, and maybe a rec therapist and a social worker, right? Here is your silo. Get your
Yep.
ass in that silo and stay there.
Stay there.
You're the head doctor.
Mhm.
Nutrients have nothing to do with that shit. So
Right.
sit down.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, because the only role a dietitian would ever have is if someone was, like, diabetic,
Right.
right?
Correct.
They didn't have a role of
Nope.
mental health in food, no. It
Nope.
was just if you had some physical health, particularly diabetes that or weight loss or something like that. So,
Mhm.
just fascinating stuff, and these are really fun conversations to have because they remind me of a lot of things. They remind me of where I was and where I am now, and how things have changed so much for me in my practice and what we're allowed to give as far as opportunities for our clients. I think
Yes,
that's the most amazing
that
part.
is.
Jen failed to mention one thing. When she left, who'd she call?
Oh,
That would be
so
me.
I
Yeah.
called Terry.
Yeah. We hadn't talked in 12 years.
Yeah, it had been, yep, and that's yeah, sometimes when you're in your lowest desperate points, you reach out for someone that I considered to be an expert still, and I knew you had gotten out. When I
Yeah.
talk about being in the system, whether you're working for the government, whether you're in the military, whether you're a police officer, I mean, you are in that system, right? And you reach for somebody that you knew got out. And that is what I needed. And more of what I got from her wasn't so much, yeah, come work for my practice. You can be a contractor. It was more about her asking me questions and validating what I was feeling, because what I was feeling, I knew it was going to kill me. I wasn't going to be able to do it. And that's really what pushed me to do it, was hearing somebody else in that space. You offering me a job felt pretty damn good too,
Yeah.
but that was it,
It
like,
always
that's what
does.
it does, and that was an honor too, because she's my unicorn, and that will always be a thing, but that was really a good that's what mattered. So when we go back to what you were talking about right in the beginning about people's experiences and the whole person and what goes into something, that's what it was about, because on the surface, I had all these things going on, and let's blame it on corrections, whatever there is, but there was so much more to it than that. My family was in there. My value systems were being compromised, right? There were so many pieces, and somebody asked those right questions for me to take a good hard look at it. And that's really what it's about. That's that whole person strategy versus one little piece is the answer, right? That's what matters. What you were doing when you were going through all of your files and looking at that whole person and all the notes that hadn't been read, right? That's what it's about. We dig a little deeper and the answers are there if people are willing to get inquisitive and lean into it.
Yeah, we just want that simple answer though, a lot of the
Yeah.
times. And it's never that easy. And if it is that easy, be skeptical.
Yeah, oh, but
Yeah.
the weird thing is we want simple answers, but we know we're complicated people. Like,
Right.
Right.
we know our bodies are complex. We know all of these things, but yet we look for this simplicity. And I think probably it's because our lives are so fast paced that we think that we don't ever
Mhm.
have time
Mm.
to make a change or things like that. That's what I hear all the time. I don't have
I don't have
time.
time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
do that.
I know.
And then I always counter with can't or won't because those are
I
2
know.
different things, yeah.
And
Like,
it's
you
like,
can? Uh-huh, sure.
how about you hand over your phone and
Yes.
let's see how much time you've spent
Yeah.
on social media.
Ooh, I gotta start doing that. There's gotta be an app that
The
tracks
Oh,
easily.
mine does, it should. Mine tells me,
No.
"You're up
Yeah,
114% from last week." I'm like, "Shit, dang this
I know.
podcast.
Yeah,
So
Darn it.
exactly.
Like, this is why I'm on all the time now." Like,
no joke, because I don't have help. I do all of this myself. My
yep.
phone told me that I was on the phone for 24 hours.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
oh
You lost a
my.
whole day of
See?
your life.
A whole
Yeah.
day of your life. Oh,
I did, and I'm
man.
just like, so I'm constantly I take videos from the computer, then I drop them on my phone, and then I put them in CapCut, and then I color grade them in
Oh,
CapCut. I
sure.
add the
Oh,
Yep.
that's a lot of
captions,
Yep.
work.
and so
Mhm.
Mhm.
you go through this whole process. Plus, I'm always listening to audibles or podcasts and all this
Mhm.
other
Yeah.
stuff. It's just funny when I saw that though. I'm like, yeah, I might have a problem.
Yeah,
That's a
I
lot.
might have to,
That's a
like,
lot.
Yeah,
dial that down a little bit,
Mhm.
yeah. It's hard because it is, like, even TikTok, like, when you go on a roll and you see it
yeah,
and, like, people are liking it,
Mhm. Yep.
you get sucked in, it's like gambling. You get sucked right into that
right.
feedback system, and you're like, "Yes, I gotta do it again," and you're like, "Yeah." Anytime I push it too hard, it flops, so
Mhm.
apparently I just need to light the DSM on fire more frequently.
And it's done. That's it. 20,000 followers. Boom. Done.
Exactly.
I'm gonna start lighting shit on fire.
Yeah, I'm so frustrated with social media. I had a good run on TikTok for a minute, and then like they stopped pushing my content for whatever reason. And then it just hits your motivation. Now I'm not exactly motivated
Mhm.
to post on that platform. I'll give it a video every now and then and then
Morsel.
a month later it's got
Mhm.
20,000 views and I'm just like, "Cool."
Uh-huh. I hate social media. I always tell her all the time. So I had no digital imprint up until about a
She
year
had
ago.
nothing.
None. I
Good for
literally
you.
had nothing
Yeah, but
because
now she's got everything because
I
of me,
know,
so I'm a
and I
bad
didn't know what to
influence.
do. I didn't even know how to get on Fairybook. I don't even talk about me being like the millennial cusp at that, and you know what? I am not. I am back like I'm an old soul. Okay, I should have been born in the like early 70s, mid 70s. That's where I fit. And I didn't even know what I was doing. And I couldn't even put anything on Facebook. I didn't know what it was. And
Oh my
so yeah,
I
a year
know,
ago. So
right?
imagine yourself like 12 months ago, never having a digital imprint. Like the closest I got was I started a Snapchat account so I could spy on my daughter. That's it. That was it. And so I had no clue what I was doing. And so I really dislike it a lot. If I could do all of this and market and do it without having to touch social media, that would be the trail I would take. Because
Mhm.
I just can't stand it. It drives me nuts and it's so much time and it's so
Right.
saturated and some of it is such BS. And I'm like, oh my God, how do people even post this stuff and watch this? Oh, you have a dinosaur arm, therefore you
Yeah.
have ADHD. What is this? How am I even competing in this
No,
pool right now?
no,
Like,
hold up, stop right there. That's not a thing?
No, yes.
apparently,
Standing like a
apparently.
flamingo apparently is the
So,
thing too,
when
like
I go to sleep like
Oh,
this,
right.
correct.
and
Yes, you're
that's not
neurodivergent.
ADHD?
You are a part of the neurodivergent community when you sleep like that. Just so you know.
Just so you know.
This is the pool we're competing
Unequivocally,
in.
this
I
is
can't.
yes.
I can't even.
Mhm.
I just sit there and I get so mad. I'm like, okay, I'm not even. Nope, we're not posting anything today. This is BS.
Last year, it was last year around this time, Jen had just started working with me. And it was at a horrible time on TikTok for me. I was being
That's good.
dragged. Yes. I had come across a community that was not nice. And
Yeah.
I didn't even know it wasn't an intentional thing. And those are the worst kinds because you're
Yeah.
like, this isn't intentional, whatever.
Mhm.
But they dragged me as if it was intentional. I was a trending hashtag on TikTok. And I'm like, for all the wrong reasons, by the way. Like it
Yes.
Right.
wasn't a good reason. But now I'm like, okay, so I was a trending hashtag. Cool. Like I'm going to use that now and to my favor. But at that time, I was so hyper vigilant. Like I
Mhm.
was so scared. Like, I would be up at night looking until I realized that you could filter out a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, "Okay,
Mhm.
filter's on, now I can actually
Mhm.
sleep." But I
Yeah.
had so much anxiety over that, like, so much that I wasn't sleeping, and my husband's like, "Come on, you need to not worry about this so much." And I'm like, "But I worry about my reputation, and I don't
Right.
intentionally
Mhm.
try to hurt anybody." And
And
so
you're
when
no stranger to being in the public eye. Like, you've been on
no.
several
Yeah.
media outlets for
Yes.
years and years. I just want
Mhm.
people to recognize that, like, you're not just
Yeah.
TikTok famous, like,
Yeah, I'm just
you've had a whole career in this where you've been brought on as
Yes.
an expert
yes.
in many different capacities. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, television, radio,
yeah,
all of the stuff,
Right.
but TikTok brought me to my knees last year, and it probably
yeah,
took me 3 months to crawl back out
Mhm.
of that weird abyss and start again, and then it didn't happen again because I think I found my audience, but then I started posting these things about informed consent and then it started happening again. I'm like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." Like, people were, like, liking and commenting and all this stuff, and I was like, "It's gonna happen again. I can just feel it. It's gonna happen again. I know it." Didn't, thankfully.
well, it is gonna
Um,
happen again because you guys have a podcast called the
oh god.
Gaslit
It is.
Truth,
It is. I tell her
Yes,
that. I'm like, yeah, it's
get
coming.
ready. Yes.
and your big 3 is big food, big pharma, and big marketing.
Mhm. It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
It is.
So it
So
is gonna you're right. It is
It's
gonna
coming.
happen again. It's
oh,
coming.
it's gonna happen hardcore. You're not
Man,
gonna
I'm gonna
like it.
find you. You're gonna have to come take care of her because I'm sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying just turn it off, shut it down, get off of it, and stop.
Yes.
Right?
What's funny
Yes.
though
Oh,
is other content creators reach out to me because they have the same experience. Like they're in that earlier space where they're struggling a little bit and they get hit with all these just weird statements, right? The statements don't
Yeah.
make sense. Why would somebody say this about me? I don't understand. And we take it so
Right.
personal and it's what do I do with this? I'm just trying to
yeah.
help people.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's okay. That's your mission, right? You're trying to help people. Cool. You can't help that person. And that's okay. So you can block them if you really want
Mhm.
to go that far. You can just leave it and
Yep.
just let your audience handle it, and they will eventually,
Will.
right?
Yeah, I call it they'll take out the trash.
No.
Yep.
Your audience
Your
will take out the trash.
yep, your
Mhm.
tribe comes and
Yep,
cleans it
they
out.
do, and they do a pretty darn good job of
They
that
do.
too.
They do.
But it's true, we are definitely opening ourselves up to some controversy here.
We are.
But I feel like I'm in a good space to do it. Maybe that was just, like, prompting me to get my shit together before this happened. This is gonna happen. But yeah, I have a feeling this is gonna ruffle some feathers but that's the whole point, isn't it? When you just think one way, and social media is a great way of just their algorithms just give you the same stuff over and over again. You get lost in your own echo chamber. You're not thinking critically at all. You're not an empowered person.
Right.
Mm.
Becomes your truth.
It becomes your truth. And I tell people this too. I'm like, 'cause everybody has their little fan base, right? Anything you do, they're going to be liking, commenting, sharing, all this stuff. And although that's really sweet, I'm still like, but you can question me. It is
Right.
okay
Yes.
to question me. I
Challenge me a little.
want you
Mhm.
to. I don't want you just to be like Dr. Teralyn said it, so it's the truth. It might not be your truth. It could just be my truth that I just said. I don't know. But I want you to be curious. I want dialogue. I want
Right.
conversation. I think that's the only way we're going to get out of this, especially when it comes to mental health. Like, we have got to create alternative dialogue about the person, not just the medication, right?
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
we've got to present these things. And I feel we're going to be giving some big voices to people to share their stories and sharing our stories at the same time and being open for some
Mhm.
bitch slapping along the way. I don't
Little
know.
bit.
You know?
Little bit.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of challenging dialogue along the way. And I've been fortunate enough so far where I just keep asking people to be on the podcast and they say yes, which
Yeah.
is, I'm just some dude from Central Illinois, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know these people. I've never shaken their hand. I've never been in front of them. I go on Instagram, I send a message, and they either say yes or no. And
Yeah.
so I've been fortunate with that. But of the people that I've been able to interview, they all have this same perspective where they're trying to make a shift in the field of
Mhm.
psychology, right? To get
Yeah.
people to
Yep.
think a little bit differently, to look at a more holistic perspective in some of these circumstances and experiences. I saw one guy on TikTok the other day and he made the statement. It's, yeah, it's not popular, but the majority of people, you don't have a mental health issue, right? You have to get out and start doing things for you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when you start
Right.
doing those things, everything else starts to line up a little bit.
Yes.
Now,
Mhm.
that's not the cure all, and that's
Yeah.
not for everybody, but for the strong majority of people, maybe you
That's
should
what
think
it is.
about put the coffee down, go
Mhm.
outside, go for a 20-minute walk, do it every day, and then see how you feel
Mhm.
at the end of a week if that's any better for you.
We again, we look for simple solutions. That is not complicated. We
Mhm.
can walk most people can walk pretty well every day, at least for
Stupid
20
simple.
minutes. Yes.
It is stupid simple. Do you drink water? That's one of the first questions I ask people, and I am blown away by
No, they
no.
don't.
And
No, they
and I'm
don't,
like,
they don't.
we're
No,
really
well,
I'm going back,
hold on.
like,
The big one is when you ask people, like, how much coffee they drink
Yeah, how many
or how much
monsters do you have in a day?
or how much alcohol they
oh,
drink,
Yeah.
and I'll say, "How much coffee do you drink in a day?" And they're like, "Oh, 2 cups." And
mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, okay, 2 cups." Like, why would somebody not say the whole yeah, that's the
Who
cup
knows?
right there.
Yeah,
Like, it's a
2 big,
huge Stanley
big
32 ounce. That's
suckers.
1 cup. And it's no, get real with
Yeah,
yourself. And that is stupid simple.
it is
And
stupid
it
simple.
seems really ridiculous for therapists to be like, "Are you drinking water? Do you drink I'm sorry, do you eat protein at all throughout the day,
Right.
ever?" And they look at you like,
Mhm.
"I'm here to talk about my problems." And I'm like, Yep.
Mhm.
Yes.
That could be one of your problems, by the way." Like,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
But
It's
most
never just
therapists
one thing. It's always a
right.
series of things.
It
Right.
is. So that's going back to those 4 pillars: eat, sleep, move, meditate.
Yeah.
Pick a pillar and start in that pillar and make some changes for yourself in that
Mhm.
pillar
Yep.
and then move to another pillar. You don't have to do all the things all the time, but you have to start in one pillar and move from there. And that does involve some self-evaluation. And now that doesn't mean that your shitty relationship isn't paying you're not paying a price for your shitty relationship or your crappy job or whatever it is. Those things also, but those are bigger issues, right? Those are things that are often not so much in your control. Whereas how much caffeine you drink, that is 100% in your control. How much you walk, that's in your control. What you think about things, going back to this is shouldn't be as mind blowing as it is for me. Going back to the mitochondria, your mitochondria is impacted by your thought process.
Right.
Yep.
Like, what the frick? Like, your mitochondria is either going to produce energy or shut down and preserve based on your thoughts because your thoughts are stressful, frightening, or calm and relaxing.
Mhm.
So it's like your thoughts actually have a lot to do with it. People don't like to hear that. For some reason, they want the answer to be something else. It's not my thoughts. That
Mhm.
can't possibly. I'm like, but it is. Your perception of reality is the truth for you, but it's not the
So
truth,
you're
you
telling
know?
me I'm not my thoughts.
I am actually telling you, you
Whoa,
are
yeah.
your thoughts, so that means you can change them and be someone else. Yes.
Flipping that. Yep.
That's the whole thing, though, is we're constantly presenting ourselves with information that is true for us, and we don't sit back long
Right.
enough in
Yes.
silence to actually address it and say, "Is this true?" And so
Mhm.
you
Actually
you
true.
live your entire life with a series of core beliefs about yourself, about the world you live in, and the environment that you're in. And that is my life. That is my map. That is
Mhm.
how I see the world. And we never
Yes.
sit in silence long enough. Put your phone down, get your earbuds out of your ears, sit for 20 minutes in silence and see what pops up for you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Meditation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's right. Yeah, we take everything at face value, and that just becomes part of it versus getting curious over
Yeah.
it.
But then you're an
Yeah.
angry 85-year-old, right?
It's true.
Because you lived your whole life never questioning why you feel the way that you do and why you think the things that you do.
My heart breaks for all of the staff that I worked with in corrections who were so incredibly bitter and
Mhm.
hated life every single day, and now I can sit on the other side of this, and there's such simple pieces that you could do, and they just were so stuck in it.
Yeah.
This is
Mhm.
how I see the world, this is how I see life, and I can't view it any other way, and it just takes people down. It takes
Well,
them down and they can't get back up.
even in that same scenario, because it's such a core, close knit group,
Yeah.
like there's so much groupthink that happens in that scenario. You have one person that
Mhm.
comes in and they're not having a great day, or they have a series of a bad 6 months,
Yep.
and everybody else is going to feel that. They're going to
Mhm.
feed
They
off
do.
that. And that just becomes everybody negatively attunes to one another in
Sure.
that
Yeah.
experience. And then you
Yep.
become miserable. But then there's the epigenetics of the job, right? Where it gets passed down to all these other people and the new recruits and the people that you're training.
Yep.
Mhm.
They
Yep, they
adapt that
do.
same thought
They do.
process. And
They do.
Mhm.
Yep, and you
In
step
some
in.
respects, I think not just the inmates had mental illness, but so much of the staff did too, whether
yeah.
it was addiction or mental health problems or even PTSD from just being on the job for so long. And it was unattended to, period. And I
Mhm.
think maybe some of that had to do with the superiority complex. There's no way I'm the mentally ill one. You are Mr. Inmate, like not me. That's
Mhm.
so I think
Mhm.
people would justify it like that.
I
So,
just did a whole podcast on that with somebody who was deputy sheriff for
mhm.
Yep.
years and years, and we were talking about mental health and entering the job as a first responder and not recognizing that you had experienced some sort of trauma to begin with.
Yep.
Right.
And
Mhm.
then it shows up at some point on the job because now you're taking on all this other stuff and all these things are happening. And I don't think we talk enough about that. Like that
Mhm.
when you enter into that field, and this can be applied to any field, but
Oh,
acknowledging that,
therapist field. I so many
oh,
therapists
well,
get
why
in
do
this
therapists
because
become therapists?
Right.
it's really funny because if we have another 2 days, I did not become a therapist because I had trauma or mental health, and people assume that. I'm like, "No, I had mental health because I became a therapist." You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it happened
Yeah.
as a result of that, and
That's a very
now
Gen X thing to say, though.
That that's better than my
probably.
story. That
You
is a very
know,
Gen X thing.
I
Yeah.
was a latchkey kid. I took care of myself since I was 9 years old. I
There's
don't
my
have trauma.
story. There's my story. Yeah, there it
Oh,
is.
I'm
See, I
sure it's
told you
mine
I am the
too.
wrong
Yeah.
age.
But
I am not
But I
that
didn't,
like
and
I
we'll
was an
have to share.
overachiever.
I was, yes, I
Yeah.
was. We'll probably have to share that on our podcast, like how we got into it, because I think people are automatically assume that you
yes.
were mentally ill once,
Yep.
which is why you became a therapist. And a lot of people in the addiction field, particularly, had addiction
Yeah.
issues, and so they became clean, and now they became an
Yep.
addiction counselor, whatever it is. I look at that experience, and I'm like, I think I'm on the other side because of the stuff I've been through. Now I bring a different framework to the clients that I deal with and to myself, to be honest. Like, you can look at things so much differently. So even though all of that was not good, some of it was really amazing. And now, particularly in retrospect, now that Jen and I are talking about it openly, because I haven't really talked about it a lot. This is not something
Well,
that I go and talk about much. But it's been really empowering to be able to talk about it and have a new lens about it and how it has impacted my work today, because it is very profound how it has impacted things today. I'm just grateful for these opportunities to like use my mouth hole a little bit more.
that needs to go on the merch.
So
That's
they,
going on the merch.
is that so you can deep throat the truth?
So we can deep
See?
throat the truth.
So
Yes.
we can deep throat it. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's got to be on
So
the merch. Oh,
yeah, so we can't leave that there.
okay.
Your
Yeah.
podcast is the Gaslit Truth. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about the podcast, the mission and vision, where it's going, and what people can expect from you guys moving forward.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the start of the deep throat piece. I think we have to address that just because
Of the double
uh,
entendre, people
It is.
automatically,
And
yeah.
yeah.
so
Yeah.
many people didn't like it. They're like, my
They
husband didn't like
don't.
it.
Well,
Her
they don't have
neighbor
a
didn't
sense of
like
humor
it.
then, I guess.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yeah.
Yeah,
clearly.
they didn't and I think
To be
some
fair,
people
he's a
didn't.
boomer.
It's
So
see, and so
There
some
it is.
people don't understand it either. Like they're like deep throat, and I'm going, do you not remember Watergate? Do you remember learning? And so most people too, depending upon where they're at, some people are like, I don't even know what the hell that. What are you talking about, Watergate? I'm like, okay. So then you got to do a whole history lesson.
Right. Oh,
But it started by her and I, Terry and I were bantering back and forth about we had the title together and we were talking about what we want people to get out of this. And I think I usually it's me talking out of my ass, which is something I do a lot. Like I have this whole other language that means things that people are like, what are you even saying? Like when I say
yes.
put her in the parsley, how do you not know what don't put her in the parsley means? Don't put your car in the ditch. It's obvious. I know.
I
Yeah,
never
see, I
knew.
did
I
I've
told
told
you
you
this
to
is
spell
never
the
that.
I've
color
never heard that.
commentator.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Right.
I know. And so here I am just spouting off shit. And out of my mouth comes, we want people to deep throat it. And there was a pause. And it was like her and I went ding ding. Oh my goodness. And then I said that, not even pulling the Watergate reference into it. And then she spouts out and she's, oh my goodness, we are the deep throating informants, just like in the Watergate scandal. And I went, holy shit. And the birth of the child happened right
Yeah,
there.
I love it.
Like, I remember the birth of this child. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. My other
Exactly.
two, fuzzy. This one I
Yeah.
got.
Yeah,
So,
it's got so much marketing potential.
Yes, it
oh,
does. And
yes.
it's so abrasive. Some people just don't like it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's fine because you don't have to
Yep.
like it to learn
Yeah.
something. So
Mhm.
that's the whole thing is. And to be honest and to be fair, I think, and Jen, you can speak for yourself on this, but there was a little fear about talking about prison stuff and
Yeah.
where we came from. Are we burning bridges? Are we doing these things? And I'm like, you know what? But at the end of the day, we're not disparaging anyone.
Right.
Right.
We are saying our truth in the matter. This is what we learned. We're not going around saying certain people are this or that. This is our truth. And this is how we see it, right, for
Mhm.
us. And I think that's what makes the podcast pretty powerful too, is that we are not just saying, hey, here we are, do what we say, like us, all
Mm-mm.
the stuff. There's more to it. Think
Yeah.
critically, think around it, ask questions, be curious, and learn about people,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So
that fits
mhm,
into our little pillars too when we were trying to come up with what matters, right? And it's we want people to be inquisitive. That was the first one, right? Because you got to
mhm,
find your truth. Yours
Right.
is not going to be what ours is, but we're going to give you 100 different avenues you maybe didn't think of, right? And so we want you to think, we want you to be irritable. People are going to get irritable. Let's ignite just a little bit of that in them, right?
mhm,
Because that's some of these things are going to be very difficult to go through and you're going to feel a little funny. Good. Feel
Right.
funny.
Well,
Feel
there's gonna be
feel weird.
resistance. Oh,
Yes. So we want you to be inquisitive and get curious and be irritable. Those two are really important. You might not like it.
it's gonna be from all the people you used to work with.
Probably.
I think they're
Probably.
That
secretly fangirling. I don't know.
I
I think there's
hope
some
there's some
secret.
girl fans out there. Yeah.
Yes,
Because
I think
they're
so.
still in it and they
Yes,
knew it. We all knew it when we were in it, but it was hard
right.
to look at it.
yeah.
But it's just really hard to admit, right? So it's you wanna tell your story of resilience and the experiences that you've had.
Yep.
That dog, I tell you what.
Oh.
Signifying the end.
He's like,
Yes.
I'm done now. Like you can be done soon here. You've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
talking to these women for quite some time now, Dad. Let's go.
No, but I did wanna say, so we are launching February 20th, right? Is that February 20th?
Yes,
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 February
the
20th
20th. That is
is,
a Tuesday.
that's our big day, our big
Mhm.
launch day. So we're real excited. So right now we're on Instagram and YouTube at the Gaslit Truth podcast. So please go there, support us, and yeah, send us a DM if you want to be on the show.
For
Oh,
Right.
that's
sure.
awesome.
That's right. We are
So
open.
so you're looking
We're
for people to be on the show?
Yeah. Oh,
absolutely,
sure, sure.
absolutely.
Okay.
Professionals, non-professionals, consumers, like all of it. Like it, we don't want it just to be our voices the whole time. We want people on the show to create some more of discourse. So more
I
conversation.
I do know what's funny is the people that follow me, they keep asking for solo episodes, and
Oh,
I much prefer doing this type of podcast because it's more fun for me. We get to talk about a lot of different things, and then they get to learn some stuff, and that's
Mhm.
interesting that you wanna hear from me. Why would you wanna do that? But
We've got some work to do on your core belief, but anyway.
uh-huh. Okay, fine. Stop
well,
therapizing him, knock it
No,
off.
I'm sorry, it's
no,
hard. Can't just
it's
turn it off.
it's so true because it's like sharing my story. This is my story, right?
Mhm.
And I wanna give it to you,
Mhm.
but everybody's still alive in my past.
Exactly.
And how do you share these things as yours? This is my story, my experience, has nothing to do with you.
Right,
Right.
This is
right.
my perception. And so
Mhm.
I haven't figured that out quite yet on
Mhm.
how to tell that stuff and then keep most people
The peace.
happy. But
The piece,
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a tough road, but
And
It's
it's
a
not
juggle.
bad things, right? But it is my perspective. And people are automatically there's gonna be that resistance. They're not gonna like it. It's not gonna feel good. And so don't listen. Sorry.
my mother would immediately call me and be like, "That's not what happened." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See?
That's so common, man.
I know.
I'm gonna invalidate your truth
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that absolutely did not happen.
that's yeah,
No.
no, no,
I'd be like,
no,
"Mom, how would you know you were working?"
no, no, doesn't matter, doesn't
So,
matter.
Oh,
Nope.
that's so funny.
What you
yeah.
think, what you feel. Nope, you're wrong. You're wrong.
You are wrong.
That's a whole other podcast,
It
It
man.
is.
is. Nice.
Dr. Teralyn and Therapist Jenn, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show today and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
making us laugh and just having a really great time and letting us know that not only do you have a podcast called The Gaslit Truth, but you're also looking for people to be on the show who are going
Yeah.
to share their knowledge, their experience, and some of their challenges and how they overcame them, and maybe drum up some stuff in regards to big food, big pharma, and big marketing.
Mm.
We'll see if we suddenly disappear off the planet.
Yeah,
You're
we'll
gonna you'll
start
know.
challenging some core beliefs here.
You're gonna know. That is so true. You're gonna be the one savior who's gonna have
Yeah.
to come find
It's
us
you.
when our
It's
digital
you.
imprint is gone, our bodies are gone,
Yeah.
everything's
I'm
gone.
relying on you.
You're in
Well,
charge.
we'll have to come up with a code word that we can text to
Okay.
each other. Yeah.
Will do.
Thank you for having us, Jason. This has been
For sure.
awesome.
It's
Yeah,
been
we'll have
great.
to
So
do it
much.
again sometime. I really appreciate
A
you guys.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.